Yeah, very good morning to you. You were listening to Kerry Today. This is Jerry O'Sullivan with you until 11 o'clock this morning. We have another of our general election debates of 2024 for you. We're meeting two more candidates who are looking for your number one next Friday, which is the 29th of November and is the general election day here in Kerry. We have Brandon Begley, who is from Kerry, who is looking for your vote for the Irish Freedom Party. And we also have Cian Prendiville, who's running for People Before Profit. Good morning to both of you and thanks for joining us on the programme. Brandon, of course, in studio with us here in Tralee, and Cian is available over the phone. Good morning to both of you and thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Jerry. Good morning, Cian.
Good morning, thanks for having me on.
Okay, Cian, I'm going to start with you on the issue of housing. I'm going to ask you, People Before Profit, some radical ideas on how you'd solve the housing crisis. Can you outline what you would do if you were elected for the people of Kerry and Dáil Éireann on the issue of housing?
Yeah, I think this is the single biggest crisis that we are facing. I think it has been created, this crisis has been created on purpose by governments that have, in the last 15 years, on the one hand, failed to build public or affordable housing. The numbers completely and utterly crashed. And on the other hand, they have invited in vulture funds and corporate landlords, literally went out to international conferences asking vulture funds to come into Ireland. And the result is that there's no public housing available. The private housing that is being built is being bought up by vulture funds and corporate landlords. And then ordinary people are stuck in the middle and not able to find somewhere to buy at affordable rates and being charged rip-off rents. And what we want to do is address that in a couple of ways. Number one, we need to cut out the profiteering that's taking place. So we want to see rent controls brought in to bring rents down to affordable levels and to cut out that profiteering by the big landlords. Number two, we think we need to evict the vulture funds, stop them being able to buy up the houses that are being built. But number three, fundamentally what we need to be building homes. We propose a policy of universal public housing where everybody, regardless of their income, should be able to get an affordable house to rent or to buy at a price that's linked to their income. And therefore, we need to be building on scale public housing. The state has huge amounts of public land. Huge amounts of public land. What we need to be doing is using that land to build public and affordable homes.
Okay.
And then the final thing is that we want to see a state construction company to, again, cut out the profiteering by the big construction companies and actually get to delivery and be training the apprentices that we need as well.
Yeah, you talked there just on the issue of rent controls. You talked about a rent freeze is what you're talking about. How long would that last for?
Well, a rent freeze,
and also an eviction ban as well. So how long would a rent freeze last for under a People Before Profit contributed to government if that's what happens?
So these measures would be for as long as there is a housing emergency, and we would want to see on the eviction ban, actually, we think we should join the European norm, which is to say that if you're making no fault, if you're a good tenant and you're paying your rent, you can't be evicted. We want to have that sort of a no-fault eviction ban, as exists in other places, to provide security to renters. We actually have very few protections for renters in Ireland compared to other European countries. So that is not just a temporary thing. That is to increase the security of tenure of renters. Rent controls is to try to bring, not just to freeze them, but we actually think that we need to be bringing rents down. And that would be until...
as long as the emergency survives. Okay, I just have to move this on because I want to get Brandon into this. Brandon Begley, the Irish Freedom Party, what would you do for the people of Kerry on housing if you were elected to the next Dáil?
There's rural planning is a serious issue on housing, and that will help us take the pressure off rural centres, urban centres. Common ground there now with People
Cian.
Before Profit. Cian, yes. The vulture funds and REITs, we need to get rid of them, and if we can't get rid of them, we invert the tax treatment.
You tax them out of it until they leave, basically.
That's it. And like private householders, landlords, they're getting charged 52%, very high taxation on the individual, whereas the vulture funds are getting 15% corporate tax. So we have to end that corporate tax on them, on the vulture funds and cuckoo funds, and that's one step. Irish Freedom Party is proposing a VAT rebate for homeowners for purchasing of houses. Also, given that it's a crisis, we need to relax some of the regulations on housing, say with insulation and that. Relax it a little bit. Given that it's an emergency, we need to streamline planning. Like, rural planning is a complete disaster in all over Ireland, but particularly in Gaeltacht areas and all over County Kerry. Many planning applications are refused young couples. That needs to change. Something has to change. Something's got to give. It's like the planners in Kerry.
On that issue, this government have just brought in the largest reform of planning we've seen in decades in this country, a huge piece of legislation. Would you and the Freedom Party be looking to open that back up again and make changes if you got elected?
Well, I don't think there's much in there for rural planning. There isn't. And with the Kerry County Council aren't even adhering to their own regulations on that. So there's not enough there. There are some proposals for Gaeltacht areas that Who's Ross the Gaeltacht would have a function in housing. Let's see how that pans out. I'm not fully confident that is the solution.
Okay.
But we're looking at it. So progress needs to be made on it.
Okay, and you're talking about a maximum 15% tax rate on the first rental property for each individual?
Yes, I think that's just basically invert the current tax treatment, because I would say landlords at the moment are leaving the industry because they're being taxed out of it, and the vulture funds are pretty minute. And
would you support the provision of public housing built by the state, or who should build them, do you think?
Public housing, yes, there's a role for it. I don't know if we need another kind of huge quagmire HSC sort of thing. I'd say
you wouldn't support a state building agency as being.
I'd be wary of it. I'd be wary of it. Maybe for infrastructure and that. We do need infrastructure, especially rurally, but it might work better with smaller local companies. Now, labour shortage is something we need to address, and we have to bring people back into Ireland, make Ireland, I suppose, worth living in.
Yeah. Okay. Cian, I wanted to move things on to the situation in regards to cost of living. What will People for Profit do to try and help people deal with the increases in cost of living that we've had?
Well, I think it's very similar to housing, actually, in some ways, is that the core of the problem here is profiteering again. So in the last 10 years, house prices have doubled. In terms of housing, rents have doubled. But the other thing that's doubled is total profits being made in Ireland. So profits are going through the roof. One small example is in the energy sector, where we have gone from having the cheapest electricity in Europe to we now have the most expensive electricity in Europe per unit of electricity. And that has been driven by massive mega profits being made. The ESB made 1.1 billion euro last year alone. Energia, 200 million on top of that. We're talking about billions being extracted from people who are struggling to keep the lights on and the house warm, and in order to line the pockets of very wealthy big businesses. What we're proposing is price controls to bring the cost of electricity back down to affordable rates and to cut out the profits. In terms of the ESB, we want to restore the ESB to a not-for-profit company. Like in the 90s, when it was not-for-profit, we had the cheapest electricity. And then they liberalised, privatised the sector, and the result has been prices going up and up. So that's what we'd like to do on the energy and cost of living, is to tackle the profiteering and bring the ESB back into a not-for-profit mandate. But also, just on the point in insulation, actually, I totally and utterly disagree. What we need to be seeing is more rolling out of higher standards of insulating. The state should be insulating people's homes free at the point of doing it. The state should provide the upfront money and then share the savings with those homeowners, because insulating homes helps to bring down electricity bills and heating bills in the long run.
Yeah, okay. All right. Brandon, what's your view on cost of living? What will the Irish Freedom Party do if elected?
At 23% is a disgrace, a national disgrace.
So that should be lowered.
It should. The Germans have 19%. Now, at the start of COVID, they brought it down to 15%. Now, we're not allowed to do that. So 19%. It was 17% when I was a teenager. 21% too high. Excise rate taxes are too high. The cost of motoring, the cost of fuel. But that 23%, we reduce that. That'll filter through the economy. That's one practical measure. Cian's suggestion there of relaxing the regulations, like there's the cost, there's the time that would take, and the labour shortage. I'd like to agree with him, but I don't think it's practical.
Okay, what would you do on the price of food in shops?
Again, we'll say everything's trucked in here. You know, most of the food we consume is trucked in, shipped in, and this is where the excise and tax, the cost.
Would you get rid of the carbon tax?
Absolutely, the carbon tax needs to go.
But also bring down the excise rate on fuel.
Yes, so like we've had a huge increase in inflation over the last few years, but the taxes have stayed the same. Why not some kind of counter-inflationary measures with taxation? The government, they're saying they're awash with money. They've got more money than they know how to spend, but they're still stuck in the post-financial crisis kind of nasty party extracting as much as they can from the people. I think we need
a change of mindset on that.
The cost of government between your like road tax cost of motoring as well. Have I answered your question?
You have indeed. Okay, all right. Keep your comments coming in. So if you have any comments on what Cian Prendiville of People for Profit is saying, what Brandon Begley of the Irish Freedom Party are saying on those issues, get him to us now on 066 7123 666. You can text or WhatsApp us on 083 300 3300. We're going to have more with both candidates after we take these. Okay, you're listening to Kerry Today. This is Jerry O'Sullivan with you until 11 o'clock this morning. We're in our debate of election 2024. I've got two of the candidates looking for your number one vote next Friday in election 2024, and that is Brandon Begley of the Irish Freedom Party and Cian Prendiville of People Before Profit. I wanted to talk to you next, Brandon, in relation to the issue of infrastructure in this county. The need to improve it, the need to get roads or public transport, the need to get the county, I suppose, moving more and develop more from the point of view of the sort of infrastructure we need to maybe catch up with other parts of the country. What's your view? What will you do for Kerry in delivering on these projects? The Farranford Killarney bypass as an example of one such project. What will you do when you get in, if you get in, to Dáil Éireann?
Yeah, there are certain stretches of road that need improving. As you mentioned, Farranford, there's areas down in South Kerry towards Sneem. Road infrastructure, yes, it needs constant investment and upkeep. For rural Kerry, I think we need sewerage schemes. That's infrastructure that will help facilitate thriving rural communities. I think that's where the
one of the most important ones for your mind.
For sewerage, allow people to live where they want to live. Like most of us are rural people. That would take the pressure off the major towns as well. Tralee and Killarney, like a lot of rural people are being forced in there, and to Dingletown. So let people live rurally, build that infrastructure.
Okay, would you fund Irish Water more or clear regulations for them in order to make it happen quicker? Because they, like everyone else, have to go for planning and through processes, and some of these things can take years. There's a long list of places that need to be addressed from the point of view of wastewater and water treatment.
Irish Water, another quagmire. I'll admit I've got no real deep insight into Irish Water, except that I hear it's a bit of a mess. Regarding sewerage schemes on a local level, small scale, be it the council or let the local communities do it themselves. Irish Water, again, I'm not an expert on it.
Okay, all right, Cian, can I ask you, what are your priorities or People for Profit priorities when it comes to the infrastructure that we need, be it roads or wastewater treatment or other issues that are needed in the county?
Well, in terms of Irish Water, we are way behind on this. We have literal sewage flowing into our streams and into our seas, and that is disastrous at this stage. And that's because the investment that we need in our public infrastructure has not been prioritised. They were more interested in wasting hundreds of millions putting in water meters into every house that were never needed, when they should have been investing that money in fixing the leaks, fixing the sewage system as well. But it's again, I think it's about putting the investment into public services. The other thing that I think we need is we need more investment in our rail and bus services and public transport services within the county, but also to travel out. The train times, if you want to get a train from Tralee up to Dublin, you're swapping back and forth. Other train journeys have been come down in time, but we need to be trying to put that investment in more direct services, faster services, but also bus services. We're being left behind. The reliance on the privatisation of our bus services is causing real problems on those
would you not give credit to the Green Party and the exponential increase in bus services in local areas in Kerry over the last 5 years?
Yes. Sure, I think the local link stuff is very good, and we need to see more of that. But we've also had privatisation of services, and it means that is the key bus connection if you want to get from Kerry to Dublin, and half the time you get there, the buses are breaking down, they're late, they're not there.
State should take over in that area as well, is what you're saying.
I think we need to have proper public transport at affordable rates, and we shouldn't be giving monopolies to private companies on these routes. And yes, I would like to see returning to a public and a not-for-profit transport mandate, and then to see the proper investment in those bus services.
Okay, Brandon Begley, you want to get in there?
I do need to come back
briefly,
on something, if possible at all.
Yeah.
Sorry to go back, but on the cost of living stuff before we took the break, I talked about the profiteering, the massive profits being made, and what Brandon proposed was to cut taxes on businesses. Without price controls, without any controls on prices, if you just cut the taxes on those big businesses, they will just pocket that money. That's the truth. We need to take action.
So you're against that. Brandon, your response on that, and you wanted to say something in infrastructure as well.
I just want to come in. I'd agree with Cian that was a complete waste of money with the water meters. Absolutely disgraceful, and the sewage. Like, county councils are responsible for a lot of the councils themselves are responsible for a lot of the pollution. With reducing tax, I'm talking about VAT. That's not the government.
On businesses, that's on what people pay those businesses.
Yes, that's never the business's money. That's the government's money.
Okay. Did you want to make a point in public transport?
Public transport. I'm unfortunately, I don't drive. I don't have a car, but it doesn't work in Ireland. Now, TFI, big improvement in rural Ireland. It is a big improvement. But for example, if you're in Dublin, if you're not out of Dublin by 5 o'clock, you're not getting home to Dingle.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. So we need to drive down the cost of motoring private cars. Insurance is a racket. The lefty in me, I'd like to find common ground with people before profit on I would think that we need to take these the compulsory third party insurance away from profit making, and those businesses being kind of responsible to shareholders. We need a change in that because they're gouging us. There's that. We've got road tax, we've got excise, we've got tolls, parking ticket. Motoring in Ireland is disgracefully expensive. We're an expensive country. We're like 48% more expensive than the EU average. We need to drive down the cost, and we'll say motoring costs are a huge. It's over 10 grand a year to run a car in Ireland, and that affects households.
Okay. All right. Listen, I want to move it on in the time that we've left in this debate. Brandon, I'll start with you, and Cian, I'll come to you on the same issue. The issue of immigration is one that has challenged this country. All parties, well, a number of parties are promising to get tougher and firmer, as they're calling it, in relation to, deportations, forced deportations, stricter controls at airports, better way of handling the numbers that are coming in terms of building state centres for international protection applicants, dealing with the continuing Ukrainian situation. Brandon, your party is promising radical change in this area. Are you saying we should close the border?
Well, a referendum. I'd like to see a referendum on immigration and citizenship and that. Now, I know people before profit want to ban deportations, but I think more like in Dublin City alone, there are tens of thousands of people who I believe need to be sent away out of it. That I've known. This is my 5th decade of knowing Dublin. It's getting worse. It's more dangerous now than it's ever been. more importantly, I think, than deportations, we have to show that we can do it. I think that, to my mind, that's the most important thing, that we show that we can do it, that we will do it. It is unfortunately inevitable. I want to be fáiltiúil and muintirthe to people only I want to be welcoming, but they've gone so far, this government, they've gone rogue on us, and we must deport thousands, tens of thousands, and a lot of the legal immigration is that the scale. It's a matter of scale more than anything. The scale of it is just frightening. And I've been an immigrant.
Pressure on services. You're from a part of Kerry that has seen huge levels of immigration over the last over decades. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people with heritage links to your area of Kerry, particularly in countries. What would you say is it not a hypocritical stance for you as an Irishman from that part, with so many diaspora gone over the world who were welcomed and left stay there, illegal and legal?
Well, I would like to bring them back. As many who want to come back, we want to bring them back. At the moment, they can't come back. They can't get planning. We'd like to bring them back.
Okay.
And it's apples and oranges comparing kind of Irish immigration historically with what's going on at the moment, where it's racketised. Like, there's people coming in, and we know there's welfare tourism. And look, I'm open-hearted. I'm a former lefty, but we have to show some toughness on this. Unfortunately,
okay, we're not being anywhere near tough enough to your mind.
Unfortunately, not.
Cian Prendiville, can I get your response in relation to this?
Well, look, there's 30 million. If they all came home, there's 30 million Irish Americans. So we'd have a crisis on that front as well.
Well, I don't think he's talking about bringing all of them home, but a portion of them, as well, I'd say.
But if they were all sent home or deported, we'd be in trouble. Look, the point that I'd say here is that when the Irish went abroad, we worked, we contributed, we helped build those societies up, and that was a positive. Do you know what I mean? What I'd like to see is those people coming here, fleeing wars or persecution, working, contributing. The People for Profit have proposed a right to work bill, so that rather than being isolated in centres, banned from working, not allowed to do anything, banned from being able to do that basic thing, that they'd be able to work, able to contribute, paying their taxes, building up societies. We're caught on trades to help build, to work as special needs assistants, whatever. We need people, but we need them to be working, to be contributing, and to be building up our society. But the government refused to do that, and the truth is, the government refused to do that because
asylum seekers are allowed work, Cian. They are allowed work after a portion of time.
6 months, I think.
They're not allowed work for the first 6 months, and until their asylum application, they're reliant on state aid. The Ukrainian refugees who have come here has been changed for those. They have been allowed work, and many of them are working, integrating, contributing, paying taxes, and that is to be welcomed. And that's how we overcome some of the fear and the division. Is when people are working and they're playing in the local club and they're in the local school, they get integrated and they into our society. That's what we need to do. But no, those asylum seekers, when they arrive here, are banned from working. People for Profit's Right to Work bill would have addressed that. And then also what we need is to see public works programs creating jobs, like a state construction company, which could have apprenticeships, for instance, to be training people in. And then let's turn this into a positive and not let the government distract us.
Okay, very briefly, I'll let you back in, Brandon, on that very briefly.
I think we have to balance compassion and the pull factors, and it's apples and oranges comparing Irish emigration. Like the Irish weren't getting handouts.
Okay, all right. We're going to talk one bit more in the time that's left to us. And Cian, I want to talk to your party, and a number of parties in the left in particular have very strongly talked about the Occupied Territories Bill, the whole situation on Gaza here. Do you really think how important is that to the average Irish voter in Kerry who's worried about putting food on the table and worried about the health service and worried about housing and infrastructure?
For sure. I think it is, and I think we've seen some fantastic protests and campaigning and solidarity efforts by people in Kerry. Weekly protests across the county for over a year now, because people can see the connection. They can see Irish people were the victims of oppression and imperial domination ourselves in our past. And then we see the same thing being happening. But also, people are shocked to find out that public taxpayer money is being used to fund Israeli weapons research. That the EU, using money, taxes paid by Irish citizens, the EU gives grants to Israeli military companies to research drone technology and other things. And that's a wastage of our money going to fund the genocide. And what I would like to see is to see that money instead, let's use that to tackle the real problems that we have: healthcare, housing, cost of living, money for building
Brandon,
homes.
finally and briefly to you, have you a view on that situation, and do you think it's important to the average voter in Kerry next Friday?
Well, it's just personally, I'd like to give people for profit a bit of credit on that. I think they've been consistent in being opposed to militarism and NATO, and that I'll give them credit for that. Yeah. I find there's a lot of hypocrisy in the rest of them. So fair play to you, Cian.
Okay, great stuff, Cian. Thanks very much for that. That is Cian Prendiville there with us on the line. We have Brandon Begley as well. Cian Prendiville, People for Profit, and Brandon Begley of the Irish Freedom Party as part of our continuing series of debates ahead of election 2024, which is next Friday. Thank you to both of you for joining me, and very best of luck to you on your canvass.
Thanks, Cian. Have a good day.